Welcome to Psychometrics Spotlight. My name is Sylvain Rochon. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Psychometrics, a SaaS-based platform that allows companies to use psychometric assessments to elevate their clients' companies, do continuous development, and to really work with them to increase productivity, return on investment, and all this good stuff that all companies want to do. And today I have a really good guest, and actually it happens to be an old friend of mine who's been a consultant in emotional intelligence and executive coach for many, many, many years. In fact, he's been providing high impact training and coaching for organizations internationally in both the private and public sector for the past 20 years. His areas of expertise are management and training, leadership training, sales, business development, emotional and positive intelligence, executive coaching, mentoring, relationship, organizational team coaching, communication, stress and anxiety management, a whole lot of stuff. And he's also a certified emotional intelligence instructor and qualified coaching training institute coach, as well as an organization and training and relationship system coach. A lot of stuff, a lot of certification, lots of experience all over the place. Patrick, I'm so happy you're here.
Well, thank you, Sylvain. I'm also excited to be here with you and be able to add value to people's life through this interview.
Well, thank you so much. And since we've known each other for many years, but not professionally that much, a little bit, but mostly through other activities. It took me a while to reconnect with you just recently. So I think it would be great to catch up the people that are listening and reading the blog, perhaps, about where does this all this intelligence come from, this experience of what's your past experience, to kind of frame what next you will say based on your expertise. So tell us a little bit about your path.
Yeah, so thank you for giving me that opportunity, because I think it's important to frame information, so to understand where it comes from and all that. Basically, in the 80s, I was a career counselor and headhunter, and I was working with psychometric to really try to match people to the optimum job and the optimum company. So trying to analyze and understand people psychologically speaking, and then to see if it's a good match. So from that time, I was already fascinated by human psychology, understanding how people works and what really makes people integrate well in various situations. And so in the 90s, I started to go into the training and development. And so I acquired different certification along the way, including this emotional intelligence, because what I realized is that we are just emotional being, okay? So we have this rational brain on one side, but we are full of emotions, and we just try to cope in our world, you know, assessing what's going on and reacting to what's happening. And if we're, you know, what I also realized is at school, we're not taught how to deal with emotion. We are taught to be good robots, like good working robots, like, you know, high performance and high and calculus and you know, all kind of and grammar and, you know, like elements that are important for sure. But what about emotions? Where does, you know, this is where everything is happening. And so I understood that concept, and I was fascinated by it. So when I did my certification in '99 in Quebec, actually, because I was in Asia at that time, I basically lived in 8 countries on 4 different continents. I have to say 8.5 countries, and I will explain the half in a moment. But yes, but that gave me also a bigger perspective and understanding. You know, always I've traveled a lot, and I'm always interested in how people react and why, and, you know, understanding them. And so whatever culture you're in, there are some commonality, and the emotion is in the center. And so understanding how that supports relationships, productivity, self-management, stress management, you know, it's all connected to the same elements. And so wherever you go in the world. So that's the common element we have as human. Now, it is true that some, country are more emotional than others. Some are more analytical than others. Like if you take, for example, Quebec, and I mean, I love that movie that represents such a good, contrast between Ontario and Quebec, which is
It's a good cup, bad cup.
good cop, bad cop. The first one, I mean, it was so typical.
Yeah.
So, stereotype, right?
Yeah.
The Quebec, more relaxed, more emotional, and then the Ontarian, more paused and more in control of the emotion, or not showing the emotions the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody have emotions, but then it's more showing or not showing. So like typically Latin countries or Latin people have a tendency to show more emotions and to be more in the emotions. When you go Anglo-Saxons, culture are more like, in control and not showing the emotion as much. So I think it's always interesting. And so therefore I continuously want to grow and learn various elements and component of emotional intelligence until I understood that it's everywhere. It's in the relationships, like I mentioned just before, it's in the stress management, it's in the workplace, it's in your personal parenting, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered recently another component of emotional intelligence called positive intelligence. So that's also very fascinating because it's all a little bit connected, but it's a different concept, different understanding. And I'm also in the process of doing my certification in that concept. And I can tell you a little bit more about it later.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, that's where I want to ask, because in our previous discussion, we talked about emotional intelligence, which is very well known. It's an entire area of study in psychology. There's lots of psychometric tests that measure that specifically in different ways, and there's a lot of attempts to validate different measurements around that. But positive quotient or positive intelligence is a specific approach or specific study from a certain research, and this was a new thing that you introduced me to recently. So can you define what that is? Like, how do you measure positive quotient versus perhaps the standard, let's say, Big Five, or well, Big Five is different, but the emotional intelligence that is like well known?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to first maybe speak about where it comes from, So you have like four main branches, research branches, but brain circuitry. So there is the positive psychology, there is a neuroscience, the cognitive psychology, and the performance science. And that has been a foundation of research for Shazad Shamin, who is the author of this book, Positive Intelligence. And so basically what it is, it's a combination of all these four branches that is put together into positive intelligence. So what is it? Well, we have these two sides of the brain. The dark side. I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan.
Sure.
So, you have the dark side and you have the Jedi side, right? So the dark side is what we would call the saboteurs. It's all these chatters, these voices that are the results of our education, of media, of society, of what they want us to believe in. And so that takes over the Jedi side, or that inner wisdom side that we have. And it's a protective mechanism, So it's good to have that too. I mean, it's nothing wrong with having this dark side in us. It's about balance. It's about the spectrum. So if you are constantly overwhelmed by the saboteurs or by the dark side, maybe it's not serving you in the, or serving your surrounding for that matter. So it's important to, everything starts, whether it's emotional intelligence or positive intelligence, starts with self-awareness. If you start to realize that, okay, well, maybe I'm feeding that dark side too much by, clicking on the negative news all the time, reading negative news all the time, and being surrounded by negative people. Are you going to really be a positive person? It's going to be tough, right? I like that story. Do you know the story of these two wolves?
Well, there's a lot of stories with wolves, but this doesn't ring the bell.
Yes. Okay. Let me tell you about it. It's actually been a story been told by a Cherokee. So it's one evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about the battle that goes on inside people. And he said, my son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is evil, and it's anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regrets, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego.
Okay.
And so the other is good. The other is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. And so the grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked the grandfather, which wolf wins? And the old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed.
Okay. It's very simple. Somehow I didn't expect that ending.
Exactly, right? So we have this in us and we feed one or the other, but more or less, what is important to realize is we have two sides of our brain. One is the limbic system. This is a left brain, the brain stems. And then we have the middle prefrontal cortex, the empathy circuit, which is part of the right brain. So, and we need that. So we have that for a reason. One is to survive, we have to be safe. Like if a tiger attacks you, you're not going to think, oh, peace and love and harmony and, say, oh, cute little cat. You're probably going to run, right?
Well, usually you try to survive a situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're not, and that's why this survival brain is important to be there, or if you put your hand on a hot stove, what are you going to do? What's going to happen? Are you going to leave it there for long?
No, I try to, you're afraid of pain, or at least you're trying to run away from it. Yeah.
And our brain is designed that way, is like, searching for pleasure and avoiding pain. This is how it works in our brain. We avoid pain and we search for pleasure. So that's typical response. And the limbic system is designed for that, is to save us from pain or from burn or from, everything related to that. So what motivates us through negative emotions is like, let's say the left brain is more like fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity. Is like a bunch of negative emotion. But then what motivates us through positive emotion is more like empathy, curiosity, creativity, passion, purpose. This is what we have in us, all of us. So again, which one do you want to feed more?
Yeah, you want to feed the good side, right?
Yeah, the one that gives you more satisfaction, more pleasure. So that's to simplify how it works in our brain. Now, what Sherzad has designed in his book, or tried to explain, is that there are two concepts. One is what he called the saboteurs, which are, and he found like 10 saboteurs. and then 5 sages.
Mm-hmm.
So the saboteurs are, you know, like a bunch of things like, let me see, give you all, yeah, try to not to remember all of them too much because I don't want to feed them, right?
Mm-hmm. Don't want to feed
But
that wolf.
yes, exactly. But you have basically, you have the master saboteur, which is the judge. You agree with me that we keep judging all the time? Whatever happened to us, we judge, good or bad.
I think a lot of people are suffering from being judgmental of themselves. Yeah.
Yes, right? It's themselves, others, situation, events. We're constantly on evaluating and judging.
Mm-mm-mm.
And then this master judge, master saboteur, has accomplices. So he like justify his judgment with other things. You know, it could be a controller, or it could be a hyperachiever, or it could be a restless, or a stickler, has to be perfect, or even a pleaser,
Mm.
which can be, you know, oh yeah, I want to please to get more loved or whatever. And it's all in the spectrum again, right? Hypervigilant. So it can be all good in some situation, but if it's too much, it becomes bad, basically.
Yeah.
There's the avoider, the victim, and the hyper rational, and who will, you know, say, okay, well, I can give you a real reason why it's like this, and so on. So you can, you know, dive into these concepts by reading the book, of course. And it's good to know they are there and to put a name on them because you can identify them better. And so this is part of this muscle that you want to build, which is the self-awareness muscle, the mental fitness muscle. And so I think it's really important to know what's going on in our brain, to understand, you know, the ramification of everything, and then to take your remote control and to switch to the happy channel, right? So that's what I'm always saying, like, which happy channel are we going to choose? So I love this 5 sages power. So the sages, it's basically like, you know, they had the shadow taking over your sages, and then the sages being the light that show you the way to move forward. So we have the first one, we could be empathizer. So he empathized towards people, but towards yourself too. So if you judge yourself, like you said before, Sylvain, you should judge yourself negatively and so on, be empathizing with yourself. Try to see, you know, oh, maybe it's not that bad, or maybe I'm not that bad, and so on. And then you have the second stage, which is explorer. I love that one because it's like, okay, let's explore, let's open us to what are the possibilities, what are the options. And then the innovator is the third one. We say, okay, let's be creative around possibilities, you know. Navigator, which is the fourth one, how to navigate towards this new perspective that we have acquired. And then the activator, which is, okay, let's do something about it. Let's take action, you know. So these are the 5 natural inner power we have within. And to be just aware of this can change your life, because each time an event, each time something happened to you, and you look at this from that perspective, from that lens, you can change your inner power drastically. And that can be with stress management, can be with trauma resolution, it can be with productivity, it can be with relationship, it can be with, you know, leadership, with everything. You can really apply it to everything. So I talk a lot now.
No, it's okay. That's why we have the spotlight. So that's kind of defines these concepts. But now I want to move that definition to a more practical sense. So how do these, what roles do these concepts play in the workplace, like in a tangible way? Because we all have these, you know, these 2 wolves, as you say, or these different voices, let's say. How do they play out in the workplace, and how, as part of your work, as you're a consultant to kind of advise, how do you play inside that to improve the conditions as well?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Everything starts with self-awareness, as I mentioned before, right?
Mhm.
But if you want to give me some specific cases, I can answer to that directly. So if you have anything in mind that you'd like to give me as an example, we can talk about it right away.
Okay,
I give
well,
you.
there are some typical examples. So we're going to take one, and which comes up often as a general case, not non-specific. You've probably heard the term that people don't quit their job; they quit their manager, right? That's
They what?
express. They don't quit their job; they quit their manager. When people quit a job, they
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
quit the job; they quit the
Hmm.
manager, right?
Yes.
That's an
Yes. Yes.
expression because
Yes.
often there is maybe a miscommunication or some kind of problem regarding a team leader or manager or boss, right? That's what it means, and that's why a person is going to be discontent and leave a company. And in a practical sense, attrition is a real financial ROI and morale problem inside companies if the attrition rate is too high, and so on and so on. So what if there is there seems to be an issue with a manager causing stress or miscommunication inside a team? Well, how does
Yes.
EI and
And
positive quotient kind of play in that to either manage or rectify this particular problem of a manager that is causing stress and perhaps even like people quitting the job?
right. I think, and from the perspective of that person who is frustrated, for example, because it starts with a frustration,
Mhm.
and it continue with maybe not expressing the frustration or not being able to communicate that frustration in such a way that it's apprehended positively. So there is the first aspect, which is understanding the power of the saboteurs and the sages. So when you say the saboteurs are more on the bad side, the dark side, the sages are the light, and it's a gift. If you see any event happening to you or frustration, and you see that as a gift and an opportunity, note it down, a gift and an opportunity, because that changes everything. Instead of, having this frustration building up inside you, and you say, okay, well, that's what is the gift in there? What is the opportunity to connect maybe differently with my manager instead of accumulating my frustration? How can I learn to communicate better in order to reach out? And so, first of all, you're going to empathize with your manager and say, okay, well, he's doing his best. He's probably under pressure. He's probably has to respond to some request, and he doesn't have the time to think about the power of his words, or know even, or maybe not even aware of it. And maybe you have a particular sensitivity because of some past experience or because of some educational component or whatever it is. So everybody have some story behind their frustration, behind their behavior. So I worked a lot with behavior style, DISC and other behavioral psychometric assessments. And we have to understand, what people are all about, and try to take on us the responsibility of our feelings. So usually people blame others, and it's so much easier because it's an escape strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm hurt. So if I'm hurt, what am I going to do? I'm going to defend. I'm going to respond to it in a negative way, and I'm going to attack, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of being responsible. So I'm attacking by saying, okay, well, my manager is an asshole. He doesn't know how to talk to people. He doesn't really understand me. It doesn't, he, mm-hmm. Oh, she, right? And instead, we could do, okay, I feel that way. Why do I feel that way? What's going on inside me? And what is the gift for that feeling? And what's the opportunity in there? Can I maybe develop a better sense of myself, finding out what's going on in me? Can I maybe try to understand what's going on in his head? Can we find a middle ground to communicate about that? Is that my opportunity maybe to be the wise person here and communicate with my manager and try to see what the best option is.
Yeah.
So let's explore. So that's the empathizer. Now let's explore options. Let's explore opportunities and options of how to go forward, how to move forward in that. Let's innovate and try to see, okay, well, let's maybe be in that situation where I can speak about that, or, you know, create an environment where I can show up differently, and so on, you know, and then you can go and navigate through the different opportunities and options and activate, and not just keeping it inside yourself forever, but activate some really moving forward action in order to get results. Does it make more sense now?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, you know, I think like you make a really good point as a consultant, right? Because your task is to identify, let's call it opportunities or problems, depending how you see it, right? To intervene and help, right? And the initial statement, which was, you know, managers, manager, sorry, we quit, we don't quit the job, we quit the manager. The usual instinct from my experience is that people will blame the managers. Well, as the manager is having some kind of issue, and therefore the person is quitting. That's the kind of the context around that statement is that, right?
Exactly.
But like you said, in reality, it's more complicated than that, because that's the person that's quitting may be quitting because of something internal to that person, or the dynamics that is specifically between that individual and the manager, and the rest of the team may be fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's often more complex. So psychometrics assessments, and I know you use many, right? And we have a platform that facilitates those things as well. Well, it allows you to illustrate, well, what is perhaps going on here, right? In each case, kind of through data, it shows what's really happening. Does the person have, let's say, high neuroticism, as an example? And then you hear reports that the person is kind of confirming that by, you know, having kind of a high fluctuation of emotional states, right? Which is by definition, that doesn't make the person bad. It just means that that's how the person is. And if the
And
manager,
I appreciate that. I want to just stop on that, because that's an important component of understanding and being more compassionate towards others. It's not about changing other people. It's about being able to accept the way they are and to maybe adapt ourselves to them,
right,
or them to us, but we cannot change them. People are the way they are. If they want to change, they will. And maybe we can create an environment that make them aware of their behavior, and then that the effect that it has on us. But number one is being ourselves responsible about how we feel towards an event like this, or a situation, or somebody who is neurotic, or somebody who has different reaction.
That's right.
That, like you said, that person is who she or he is. And it's like, how do we respond to that is the key.
That's right. And that is the job of the trainer, HR consultant, whoever that is whose role is to help, right? And develop these teams. And sometimes, like to the same point, sometimes it's communication styles, sometimes it's personalities, or not listening enough. There's lots of different reasons why a dynamic is not working. And there's always a way to adapt.
There's a wide layer of reasons, you know, many layers of reasons, many colors of reasons why people, or justifications of why people are a certain way. And I think it's important to have that wider understanding of the diversity that we're in. When we speak about diversity and inclusion, you know, this is like the big trend right now, which is great, but we have to understanding on many levels, not just colors, religions, sex. It's like also psychology. It's like, you know, people became who they are because of events that have affected them, traumatized them. We all have traumas on different degrees of impact in our lives. You know, they have impacted us more or less, and we have coped with them more or less. And so we are reacting in many situations with different ways and different colors. And it's that diversity of reactions and diversity of feelings that is important to understand. I wrote a book, I don't know if you're aware of it, called Be Different, Be You.
Yep.
Okay, so it's all about recognizing that we're all different. And this is the beauty of our humanity, is to be different and to accept the differences, but not only accept, but to encourage the differences. Why? Why would we encourage the differences? It's not typically a natural element of mankind, because we try to belong to people who are looking like or being like us, in the same tribe, in the same way. But if we learn to recognize and appreciate the differences and learn from these differences, we're going to enter a better world. We're not going to have war between Russia and Ukraine and this and the convoy and the, all this stuff we're living in, which is just power struggle. And we have to be all the same, and we have to all be vaccinated, and we have to all be robotically managed, But if we say, no, well, look, this is enriching. This difference is enriching. It's an opportunity to learn, to grow, to accept, to be more flexible, because this is the key of mankind. I learned one day something. Before, I was in a situation where if I don't like somebody, well, I'm just not going to connect with that person. I don't like them. I don't connect with them. It's easier. Escape strategy. Now, what I do, I say, I don't like somebody. I want to get to know them better. And I want to see how I can develop some kind of friendship. And sometimes it's chemistry, so you don't have chemistry with some people, or sometimes it's their behavior and their style, and you cannot. Well, I'm making voluntarily efforts to be close to these people and to not get them under my nerves and to escape. I'm trying to appreciate the differences. I'm trying to look behind this. I also love this book, Nonviolent Communication or Speaking Peace from Marshall Rosenberg. You heard of them?
I have not, but go on.
Okay, I highly recommend. It's a way to communicate or to understand what is behind the voice or the chat or what the person say. What is behind this? Because sometimes we say something, but we don't mean it, or we don't. We're not able to express it the way we really think. So it's this nonviolence communication or speaking peace, which is from the same author. Speaking peace is a bit faster version of the nonviolent communication, because that nonviolent communication is quite a book. But yeah, really interesting to just try to understand other human being and try to connect with them, whoever they are, because coming back to what you said, they are the way they are. So It's about how we apprehend that difference.
Well, there's the traditional way of thinking, and I do mean traditional as in past tense, is that, well, there's a certain archetype, for an excellent worker, like in a very broad sense, because we were for the longest time, even to some degree, even now, but we're shifting a bit. We wanted to train people a bit like machine, like, manufacturing workers and things like that. So uniformity and conformism, was a value in schools and otherwise.
Exactly.
But according to more recent research, and there's been some interviews in the past in this series talking about this, that shows that in many, many cases, a team that is as diverse as possible will provide better business outcomes. So encouraging from a business perspective, from an ROI, strictly like executive perspective, right? Encouraging the notion of wide diversity of personalities, of culture, of ways of thinking, ways of communicating, and so on. now the challenge for people that do measurements and that consult, the challenge with a very diverse workforce or team is that there is going to be a lot of opportunities for clashes too, right? Because of the non-uniformity. So there's a lot more, I guess, empathy or communication that has to happen. In your experience, have you? What do you say to this shift and this mentality of as diverse as possible? And have you seen the results of that, or the challenges associated with this?
This is exactly what I liked in Canada when I came to Canada. It's that when I arrived in Toronto, I stayed there for 20 years. Right now I'm in BC and British Columbia on the other side. But when I arrived in Toronto, I was fascinated by the integration of all these, races, religions, and acceptance of everybody working in harmony together. And it was very enriching for me because I was in Taiwan for 3 years, where, you have less diversity, much less diversity. And you arrive in Toronto and you see like a wide range of humanity just in one city, a wide, colorful scope of humanity. So I love that. And what I like in the Canadian Human Charter, or Canadian Human Rights Charter, that is emphasizing on the respect of the diversity of the respect. And now there is like a tendency in Canada to have diversity represented, whether it's on the language level, which is at least some people speaking French and English, whether it's men and women, whether it's minority, visible minority as well, whether it's different country represented in that same organization. And these organizations, like you mentioned, are definitely more powerful because, the people who work there are connected to their, environment, to their tribe, so to speak. And so the company is wider represented. I remember I went to a bank, they said they wanted to hire Chinese and Indian and, Quebecois and, like different people representing the different diversity we have in Toronto. And so that's smart because automatically you increase your return of investment here, right? Your ROI is higher. And then it's about how to communicate together. So now that's, of course, a little bit challenging. So this is where we come in as consultant coaches. Say, how do we help them to move forward towards this? And I feel blessed because I've been around the world, I've traveled a lot and I lived in different countries. So I had to adapt to the different cultures. It was like, in 96, I left Switzerland to go to Asia. And living in Europe, being from Europe, you have access to a lot of diversity just around, In Switzerland is surrounded by Germany, Austria, Italy, France, and these nations are also different. And so, and you don't need to go very far to just, now Italy, wow, what a difference, what a contrast. And Italy and Austria are just next to each other. And what a difference, So it's interesting, or even Germans, part of Switzerland and France. Wow. You can see when you cross the border that you are in a different country, just different country without speaking with people, So it's fascinating. So that has sculpted me so to really understand. So when I went in 96 from Switzerland to Asia, it was a culture shock because that's completely different. Asia and Europe is like almost the opposite, so to speak.
Day and night.
Yeah, day and night. Absolutely. The West and the East. So yin and yang. So it was interesting to see how I was responded to the environment, and I had my ups and downs, right? But I learned and I loved it. I discovered it, and I loved that, culture, and it's in my heart now. I stayed, I was supposed to stay 6 months, and I stayed 3.5 years. So 6 months in Hong Kong and 3 years in Taiwan. And so so basically I have that a little bit bigger scope and understanding of how different people react. I also lived in North Africa at some point in my life. I worked all over Europe, so I kind of understand different cultures. But it's always a learning, because you not only come across different culture, you come across different people that have different, how do you say, marks, right? I mean, different ingrains. I'm looking watermark, they come with their education, with their trauma,
Their
with
baggage.
their perspective, so yes, you have a culture, but you cannot judge them. And here's where the judge come in. You cannot judge, oh yeah, he's from Quebec, oh yeah, he's from Switzerland, oh yeah, he's from US, and put them in a box already. No. Yes, maybe they have an influence from their culture, but they are still individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still thinking differently, and they're feeling differently. So why don't you explore? Why don't you try to understand, to empathize, to see what's going on, and take the time. And if we all would take the time, we would live in a better world, for sure.
Well, you know what, Patrick, and there's nothing to be said after that last comment. We could live in a better world if we understand. And so I think we should leave it to that thought. And I would encourage anybody that's watching this or that's reading this or to please contact Patrick if you want to have support, if you have questions, you want to have his coaching. His information is in or around this video or blog. And engage. This is a person that has been around a lot. That will be able to help your teams in the workplace and also personal life, because nothing is isolated into a specific area when you work with emotional intelligence and emotions and motivations.
To your point, Sylvain, people ask me sometimes, you business coach or life coach? I say, well, it's one and the same, because when you work with business, maybe you give a little emphasis at the beginning on business, but everything is interconnected and interrelated. So you go in your life, it's about work-life balance. It's about understanding what's going on, because if it doesn't go well in your work, maybe it has an impact on your family and vice versa. So yes, and it's all about mental fitness. So mental fitness is a concept of becoming more aware of what's going on and being able to activate the remote control, because ultimately we are all in control. It's just about understanding self, understanding others, and make the right choices.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity of expressing all that and asking the right questions. So I could go on and on and on.
Maybe another time, huh?
Yes. As you can see, I'm passionate.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a beautiful rest of the day.